I couldn't look at the future because I knew it was grim.
On this week's GMAC interview, we are delighted to be joined by the CEO of the Together Academy, Therese Coveney.
At the time where your opportunities in life should open wide up for you, they seem to still narrow for people with disabilities. We had strong motivator. We had children, all of us have children with Down syndrome, but we didn't know did everyone else want it. And that was the beginning of Together Academy.
Who work closely with the Down Syndrome Centre to create opportunities for people with Down syndrome to re-enter or enter the workforce.
The big day where we knew we were on something immense was the day that our Together Academy students did the haka against the All Blacks. Yeah. That was the day we kind of went, everybody else loves this too.
Without any further ado, here's Therese.
The All Walks podcast is now in your ear.
Go live! We are here at the lovely Queen's and Dalkey in the Vico rooms, and I'm delighted to have this week's guest with me, Therese Coveney. Thank you so much for coming in. How are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks,
Good.
Greg. Yeah, it was the first time I've done a podcast, I think. So
you're nearby. You busy at the moment?
Incredibly busy at the moment. Yeah, incredibly busy at the moment. Work is very full on. We're running a very, very popular, well-liked, interesting project, and then separately I have a lad who apparently is doing his leaving cert, his junior cert in a couple of weeks, and 2 other kids at home. So it's full on. Life is full on. I think for most, particularly women who are working, if they're balancing home life and work life, it's always a continuous juggle, but a good juggle, one I'm happy to have.
So let's go right back. Okay. You grew up in Dublin, is that correct?
I grew up in sunny north side of Dublin, on the beach in Sutton, on Burr Road. Beautiful part of Dublin. And they say, very few people leave the peninsula of Howth, so I'm still very attached there. I have a younger brother and sister, and they are both, my sister bought a house on the same road as my mum. Everybody has stayed out in Sutton and in Howth, and I would still be over there quite frequently. And so many of my junior and secondary school friends are still there, so very attached. Very happy here in Blackrock, but had a great childhood over in Sutton.
It's a beautiful part of the world.
It is.
And you alluded to Howth Head.
Yeah.
But what people don't realise is Sutton didn't exist many years ago.
Absolutely.
It's caused by deposition. It's a tombolo.
Yeah.
And when you're out in Sutton, past Portmarnock, around Sutton, Howth, it's
amazing, and it's
area,
a really tight community as well. And when I met my husband, one of the first things I ever wanted to do with him and show him was the Bailey walk out in Howth and do the cliff walk, and I was so excited to do it. I had and I remember fast forward a year and we were deciding to buy a house together, and I fully assumed we would go out to Howth or to Sutton if we could afford it, and he said, no way are we going over there. I was like, why? And he said, because the first time you brought me out there, we went to do a walk on the cliffs, and it took about 4 hours because he stopped and spoke to every single person. And he said, I remember thinking at the time, if it goes anywhere with this one, there's no way I'm coming out to be her fella in Howth. So I still remain very loyal to it, and I love the place. But it was time to forge our own path now.
Go across the bay so you can still see it.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and still spend a lot of time there. Yeah.
After school, you went to Maynooth?
I did. Went to college in Maynooth.
Okay.
I did my geography and sociology degree there, and then did my master's in sociology there, and just loved it.
Yeah. Were you clear as to what you wanted to do when you were leaving college?
Oh, absolutely not. Okay. Absolutely not. Even with our, with the staff we have now, some of them are much younger, and with friends over the years, I think I found my calling when April, who we'll go on to talk about, was born. I would argue that I probably didn't find my career flow until the last 5 years. I think I was completely directionless. I don't even know if now what I feel is real strong career ambition, but I feel a very deep calling to the work that I'm doing at the moment, and I feel very driven by it, and it's very mission and vision focused, and that's a mission and vision that myself and the team that have set it up have curated, so it comes from a much deeper place, the work we're doing right now. So that's a very long way of saying I've talked to a lot of particularly young girls in their 20s and 30s, and they're a little bit unsure of where they're going. And I just don't think that that's something any of us should be too afraid of. I think it does happen at some stage. I was what you might describe as a late bloomer, and I'm kind of glad I didn't find the calling an awful lot earlier. I wasn't that worried about career. I worked to enjoy it and to pay my rent or to pay, but no, I wasn't somebody who came out of college and wanted to go into a big company and work hard. That's not been my background. And I came to this job with a very severe skills deficit in that area. So it's been a real learning curve for me, because I hadn't been used to working in a big corporate and business environment. And I've spent a lot of time the last couple of years trying to fast learn those skills or work with people who have those skills in abundance, which I'm very, very lucky with.
No, I'm really looking forward to hearing about your journey with the work with Together Academy and with the Down Syndrome Centre. It is brilliant. Before we get there, did you have family that were aligned to a particular sector? Whether it was like doctors, lawyers, business people?
Work didn't feature in my family home growing up as a big thing. My parents didn't sit around the table and talk about work. Work was to be done 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and they sat around and talked about planning Eurocamp trips to France. That's where their energy went, and I think that was lovely. My kids are growing up in a house where we talk about work an awful lot, and you kind of have to wonder.
I think that's commonplace. Like society has changed.
Very much so.
People are working from home. They're working with people in America or with Australia. They're on calls late. Time is so precious, and I think back to growing up in the 80s. Into the early 90s, where it's just so simple.
Oh, so easy.
So simple.
I like my memories of my parents kind of, with my dad coming in the evening. He would often cycle into work, come in the evening, maybe making a beer, sitting in the back garden, mum making the dinner. Like, it was just so different. As you say, like, my lads come in now and I'm hushing them on a call. I'm leaving them, putting my, going up to my bedroom to finish off a call. I'm going back on to do emails at night. And for all of the progression the country has made and we've all made, you do wonder that they are in a much more stressful environment. I was never in a stressful environment. I vaguely remember the recession in the 80s because I remember my dad being a bit worried about something. Nowadays my kids are watching the news, they're so engaged, they know what's going on. You really have to wonder, like, are we doing the right thing with them at all?
We can talk for a long time around social media and the positive and negative implications of that. But certainly for me, mobile phones and the attention that's taken and the ability for a young person to get glued to a device and get conscious then. They see other people their own age having a certain image that we all know is probably fake. They're on a holiday, they're having a nightmare, and they put up a picture of them. It's the best holiday ever because you kind of have to. And I think that's a challenge. Being a young person now, they're dealing with a lot, aren't they?
Oh, so much more. Like, when you look back and we talk about those times in college, like, they stay in our memories, and that's where they should be. Our kids are growing up now and they've got such a sense of fear about what they can and can't do, what's safe, what's not safe, how things will be interpreted. There was a freedom that we had growing up, and I wouldn't change any of it.
A really important moment in your life was the birth of April, and that has in itself released this amazing path that you're now on. That's
very well put. That's wonderful. That's kind of exactly what happened, I suppose.
For those listening, talk us through that and how you worked yourself through that situation.
Okay, so I met Rory, my husband, who is fantastic, really great love of my life, and I was a little bit older when I met him. Thought I was going to be on the shelf forever. I thought I was never going to get married, never going to have kids, and there were things I always wanted. And anyway, we met, and very, very quickly he pulled me over to Blackrock in County Dublin, and we had our first baby, and we had another little boy. We had 2 lads within 15 months, and then time was of the essence, so very soon we had another little girl. So the day that Ollie, my eldest, turned 3, April was born. So it was very, very quick and great, highly to be recommended. But and I suppose she was born with Down syndrome in Holles Street, and we had no prior notice of that. So it was a tremendous shock. But in many ways we were it's funny, she got very, very sick, critically ill on about when she was about 4 days old. And for us, very, very quickly, the upset, I suppose, at having this baby who was so different to the other 2 births that we'd had was really forgotten, because it became a case of she was transferred to ICU to have an operation. And for us, acceptance around April's disability came very, very fast, because we went from dealing with having a baby with Down syndrome to dealing with a baby who may not live. So it was a very intense time. She had a blockage from her tummy going into her bowel, but she was very, very sick with it. And and it's actually not that uncommon. About 6% of babies born with Down syndrome have it. But she was just very sick because she was so small. She was very weak. Now she was fine and she's grand now. But that's a long-winded way of telling you that we reached a joy about April a lot sooner than we may otherwise have, because we knew what it felt like to lose her very quickly. So very soon after she was born, we decided that we just wanted her to have as very close to a life as her brothers would have, albeit with additional supports. We kind of knew, as I said, my mom was a social worker. I had met people from St Mary's in Baldoyle and the CRC. I had a reasonable understanding of disability, and I just knew she was going to need a lot more help. So we got on to being just kind of a normal family for the next few years. And one of the most important meetings I had in the very, very, within a couple of weeks of her being born, was with Peter Gaw from the Down Syndrome Centre. Peter I had met in a previous life, at an earlier time in my life, and I remembered him being a man himself, and Mary had 2 children with Down syndrome, which I thought was just unheard of. Yeah. And within 2 minutes of April being born, before my husband Rory knew she had Down syndrome, Peter Gaw's name popped into my head. It's the first person I thought of after she was born, very first person. And I chased him down a couple of weeks later when April was still in hospital, and I went to meet him, only to discover that he had set up, I was just setting up, in the process of setting up, a centre for children with Down syndrome. So that began a journey for our family with the centre, which was in its real infancy. It had, I think, 1 speech therapist. It did 1 programme. But April started availing of services there very, very early. And I met his son Harrison and his daughter Tara, and then he had 2 other kids who I'm sure you know, Andrew and Ali, who are fantastic people as well. And we spent the next few years just supporting April. She made it into mainstream school with her 2 brothers locally in Blackrock, and she was getting her OT and her occupational therapy and her speech therapy and her preparedness for school courses up at the Down Syndrome Centre, and it was going really, really well. And your mind always, when you're a parent, turns to the future. And I started kind of thinking about what's going to happen when she gets older. And people tell you when you have a child with a disability, don't look too far ahead, don't look too far into the future. But you get to a point where you kind of go, okay, what's coming down the tracks? And I discovered that there was this really awful statistic about that 90% of young adults with Down syndrome were not in paid employment. And I kind of thought, what are we doing? Going up and down to the Down Syndrome Centre, getting therapies for April, pushing her through mainstream school, if there's nothing really at the end of it for her. So that was just a calling card where I just wasn't happy, and I was very unsettled about it. So at the time, I mentioned I was working with in home care, and I was talking to people about this, and I met a wonderful woman who had a relationship with Down syndrome, and she's a very successful businesswoman. And she said to me, Therese, if somebody needs to kind of do something about this, I said, well, I'm going to go onto the board of the Down Syndrome Centre. We'll see if we do something there. So I went onto the board of the centre with Peter, and everybody was supportive of doing an adult project. But in my naivety, I thought I could do that and manage a job and raise a family. That wasn't to be the case. So re-entered what became our main philanthropist, and she said, if you want to quit that part-time job that you have, I will replace that salary for 2 years. And that'll give you time to go off, investigate what's out there, what's happening in the world for young adults with intellectual disabilities. What is the programme that you might be able to run or champion, or at least tell the centre about. And that was the beginning of Together Academy. And that was probably about 7 years ago now, I think, maybe 6 years ago. So I quit my job, and with great support from the girls that I was working with, and started about Googling and looking to see what sort of courses or what was out there for young adults, and did some travel, went to Barcelona and up to Belfast and Brighton and over to Glasgow, and saw some programs that I thought were of interest. And what really I kind of realised at the time was that the big challenge was that young adults, when they turned 18, were going into really day service provision. And some of the day services are fantastic, but there isn't a huge expectation around work. And the other piece was that our young adults weren't really getting kind of tangible courses that a HR person could lift and say, okay, this is what somebody can do, so we can give them a job here.
Yeah.
I found through speaking with people, I have a lot of friends in the business sector, through speaking through people in both community sector and in business, that there was a real belief that they would like to support somebody who learned a bit differently, but they weren't meeting these young adults. So there was lots of different reasons why this wasn't happening, and it was like, how do we resolve that? What can we do? So initially, my first instinct was, we need a course that people can recognise. And I didn't really know where to go. As I said, I didn't have a background in business. So I approached Social Entrepreneurs Ireland, which are an amazing organisation. If anyone is thinking of starting something that has a social mission of any sort, be it in environment or disability or education, whatever. And they brought me in on what's called an Ideas Academy course. And on that academy, they kind of mentor you and help you tease out an idea. And one of the key pieces of advice on that was to put a steering committee in place of people that would have a gap, who would fill the gaps in my knowledge. So that would be legal, marketing, comms, education, cafes, because I knew I wanted a culinary edge to this sort of thing. And I got 9 people, all of whom had some investment around Down syndrome, to sit in a steering committee. And 4 of them are now employed in Together Academy. That became the start of Together Academy. They did it in a voluntary capacity for the first couple of years. Very often, when you have a child with a disability, a mother leaves the workforce.
Yeah. And
so many of them are high wattage, high ability people. And I have managed to take 3 of them kind of out of early retirement or unenforced retirement. And in one case, Kathy came from employability, from another background in employment, to really give me their strengths and their abilities to create a new business, which is Together Academy.
It was 4 mothers who got together. And
under the governance of, I always remained with Peter on it. Yeah. Peter kind of charged me with, you go do it. And the beauty of that, and again, I'd advise anyone, if they're setting something up, if you can align with a charity, because what we had there was, we'd audited accounts, we had a tax clearance certificate, there was prior... If you want to get grants in Ireland, there was a governance structure around it. There was a board. There were all the things that I just couldn't have done that on my own. But I also had within Peter and Mary and the wider team at the Down Syndrome Centre a real interest that we are now equipping these children to do so much more than has been expected of them before. We want somewhere for them to go. So it really has worked. It's been a really good win.
The 4 mothers got together.
Yes.
You've given an outline. Who came up with the name, the Together Academy?
I came up with the name. I was standing in my kitchen one night and I was trying to come up with the name, and I remember the strength of the call to action from the Together for Yes campaign. And I remember saying that word together is so strong. And I knew I wanted to hook it into some type of college language. So Together Academy was born, standing, cooking dinner in the kitchen one night. And it has proven to be really, really strong. People really like it. And it was conscious to not put it under the name of the Down Syndrome Centre, because we wanted to kind of set it aside a little bit and just kind of give it its own identity for adults, but it's come on really well. And one of the mums who I got involved with initially as a volunteer, and now who works with us, Laura, had a background in Irish Distillers of marketing and branding, and she said, and I'm very mean about spending money, and she said, we've got a great name, we need to get it looking good, it needs to be a good brand. So if people want to Google, Together Academy, the TH, there's a hand kind of goes around each other. We have a beautiful brand, and that hand, if people look at it, the fingers on it are slightly shorter, and they are actually a person with Down syndrome's hand, putting their arm around the community. So there's a real bit, and again, it's something that if people are setting something up, I think it's really important to get. It's the one thing I spent the money with Red Dog, and it was a big chunk of money that I didn't have at the time, and it was really worth it to just do that piece properly, because what we were really trying to do was reposition the perception around disability, and not to have it just kind of just to really change expectations of what people would see when they met our young adults, to put them in properly branded t-shirts, a good apron. So often when I had been in disability organisations, I had seen like that sort of thought hadn't been put into
like a yellow t-shirt that makes them stand out as somebody who's different,
No, and we just really wanted to kind of, the one rule, it's actually, and I like kind of telling this because I think it's really important. Every single decision we make at Together Academy, we run it through the prism of, is it good enough for our very privileged South County Dublin, typically developing children? And if it's good enough for them, if it's a coffee shop they'd like to work in, then it's good enough for Together Academy young adults. If it's a t-shirt that you know that they'll put on and be okay getting on the bus wearing, then it's okay for our young adults with Down syndrome. If it's an event we're going to organise, it has to be something that meets the expectations if they didn't have a disability. And that has been a really strong calling card for us, and it's really worked. It's really helped us make proper decisions around how we work, and so a brand was important and the name was important.
It makes so much sense when you lay it out like that, and it is a case of changing the stigma and changing people's impression of somebody who has a disability. Look, these kids are well able to get stuck into the workplace, and I'm excited to talk about this. I really am, because I met you firstly about a year ago and we did an event. And I remember you listening to it so passionately, and it was very smart, very articulate, and I think a lot of people can learn lessons from that. There's going to be people listening who have family members who have disabilities and they don't know where to go. And listening to this, I know that they're going to pick out little bits that are going to help them, and that's important. Do you remember the first day when yourself and the other three mothers were like, oh my God, this is happening now, we're turning a key and we're starting?
Well, yes, there was loads of those, but there was COVID in the middle. The big day where we knew we were on something immense was the day that our Together Academy students did the haka against the All Blacks. Do you remember that?
Harrison,
Now, we were up and running at that stage, but that was the day we kind of went, everybody else loves this too. Do you know what I mean? Like, we had strong motivator. We had children, all of us have children with Down syndrome. All of us want them working in years to come. So we have massive skin in the game. But we didn't know, did everyone else want it? Now, that was the day that All Blacks, after Anthony Foley, that's their second biggest ever TikTok, it's had 9 million views, last count, which was last year. So I'm sure it's had more than that now. So that was the day we knew everyone else loved it, and they loved our students, and they loved what they could do. I think it was when the Education Training Board took us seriously when we approached them around doing a course, and when John Fitzpatrick and the team at Wanderers Rugby Club, they approached the Down Syndrome Centre around maybe doing something for people with Down syndrome, and I kind of got wind, and I was looking for a location, and I said, come here, can I go down and have a look at that clubhouse? And I went in and I saw this really ratty kind of worn out billiards room, which still had the no smoking signs up, and it was very tired. It had been used as a kit room for 30 years, I'd say. You know it? Yeah. I saw that, and then I went upstairs to the bar, and I was like, and when I said I was going to pitch a proposal to them, and I met the board of Wanderers, and they were fantastic, and I met them in the Intercontinental, and I remember going in and selling this idea that we could turn that billiards room into a classroom, and that we could give them their Heineken bar at the weekends if they liked it, but we would like it Monday to Thursday to set up a pop-up cafe, and that we would be responsible for it and we'd look after it. And when we got a unanimous yes from the board of Wanderers, that was a huge moment, because then I'd no budget, like I'd no money to open up a cafe. So and to this day Wanderers have never charged us a cent. That has been and we're in our third year there now. But we have given them an award-winning community cafe. It has worked really, really well.
They're in the middle of a redevelopment.
They are,
about to start one. Are you going to be feeding into that?
All going well, absolutely, yeah. We've got, when you're running something that's successful, it's incredible the opportunities that come to you. We're at a point now where we have to do, and I am being sat down very firmly and told I have to come up with a very a strategic plan, because we've been in startup mode for a long time, and now we need to really bed in on what we're doing. And every day at the moment I have emails coming in with potential opportunities for new coffee shops, for potential locations, for collaborations, and they are all brilliant. But when you're working with our young adults, they need a lot of support. you need staff, and I can't just go following everything that feels and looks good. But absolutely, when Wanderers do develop the new clubhouse, we'll have some involvement in that for sure.
Super.
And in the meantime, we're hoping to keep our cafe running there and our classrooms running there. Yeah.
So you have a classroom in Wanderers.
Yes.
How many students were in that first class?
We had 16 we took in September 2021, and they've all graduated now, and they're all in various employment or back in our training cafe or in Happy Out, which I'll talk to you about in a minute. And we've taken in a new group of 16 since this January, and we have got another program called an Accelerator to Work program, which was really for people who either came to us midway through the course and we didn't have a place for them, or people who've kind of been years and years in services and their family or they just wanted a job, so we coach them with job skills. So we're working with about 46 young adults now. Yeah, it's big and growing. Yeah, we've just announced an amazing new partnership with SMBC Aviation leasing company. And again, they came to the cafe, they saw what we were doing, they loved it, and they are opening in 28 Fitzwilliam, which is my memories of 28 Fitzwilliam was my mum cheerleading Marion Fluke and Nulo Fuelo, and when they used to chain themselves to it years ago. So Together Academy is opening up in the city centre later in the summer.
So that'll be a second venue?
That'll be our second venue, and it'll be our second college venue.
There's demand for places?
Massive. Yes.
A typical student goes in after school?
So we start with young adults who are 21 upwards. So and what we do is we when a young adult is in day services, as April will be in the future, it is actually incredibly important that you have a service. So as for parents, there was no way we were going to ask people to choose to come to us or go to their service. So what tends to happen is they come to us for 2 days a week and they remain in their service the other 3 days a week. So a typical day for our students, if you're the Monday, Tuesday pod or you're the Wednesday, Thursday pod, and you come in at, you're meant to start at 9:30, they're always in by 9. The guys always come in early, and they're meant to finish at 3, and they're usually kind of moving along home by 3:30 in the afternoon.
Great.
Yeah, so typically at the moment, the new group that came in January are doing fully classroom-based learning on their 2 days, and one day they're fully in the classroom and another day they're off in a professional kitchen doing their kitchen or their culinary skills. And come this summer they will start training in our cafe upstairs. At the moment in our cafe upstairs in Wanderers, yes, at the moment in our cafe upstairs in Wanderers we have graduates working, and they're all in paid employment. So that's, it's fantastic. So it's been run by the young adults who've already been through the program, because you need a bit of time with the new students coming in. But I suppose the jewel in the crown of our business at the moment is the new collaboration that we have then with Happy Out, which I'm sure you've been to in the Baths in Dunleary. I mean, we have 12 young adults out there in paid employment and doing exactly what we set up for, being paid the same as their typically developing colleagues. Amazing. And doing the jobs of their typically developing colleagues because they've been trained. Yeah.
So as part of the syllabus while they're training in Wanderers, is that around social interaction? Is it around
very
general?
much. The point of that is that, and I knew this, and we knew this from raising children with Down syndrome, that the classroom-based learning is solely academic, and it doesn't really transfer into proper work practice unless you have an opportunity to do and repeat and make mistakes and build your confidence and build your skills and build your ability to seat a person, look at a person in the eye, make a mistake, it be okay. It's very hard if you go down to Happy Out in Dunleary and you drop a tray of glasses. If you're in Together Academy at Wanderers, that's fine. I mean, no one's going to give out to you in the Baths either, but the guys need that time to bed in their skills, to grow their ability to do their job out in the community. So the idea of the cafe is very much repetition, learn by doing, make your mistakes, take time in the morning to rehash what happened on your last shift. It's a much slower paced, much more intentional kind of work area, and it works just brilliantly. Yeah.
Just brilliant.
And in SMBC, we are going to be starting our first vocational training course, and that is going to be, we have young adults who come to us and they're not really interested in working in hospitality. So it could be that they're interested in having a desk job, or they're interested in working in a hairdresser's. We're going to be kind of much more curating courses there that are very much driven by the desires and passions of the person coming in. Everybody, though, who goes into the work needs to know how to comport themselves, how to present themselves, how to navigate a difficult customer. So there's how to write their CV, so there's a lot of kind of core things that we can cover. But what we really would like to do in the next iteration of what we're doing at Together Academy is kind of lean into some of the young adults who working in a busy cafe is not going to be right for them. And there's a great growth area at the moment, and we have funding now from Rethink Ireland, and we've deepened our relationship with Social Entrepreneurs Ireland, and it is around that social enterprise world where you've got busy corporate over here, charity here, and there's social enterprise in the middle, and that is where you run a business and it has a social mission. And I think in the next few years that we will be growing that part of the business as well. We've started it. We like, if you want to run a social enterprise, you have to bring in traded income. And when Ali, our chef, isn't busy helping the guys in the kitchen in Wanderers, she's doing corporate catering. That's a huge growth area for us. We cannot meet the demand of what people are looking for, but it's lucrative as well. So there's a trick there whereby, for some of our young adults that may not be quite as into the public facing aspect of work, that they might be able to work in a business. But a huge part of our driver is around that inclusion and visibility. So that business, to me, shouldn't be often an industrial estate. How do we do that business so that the people who are involved in it are still seen, are still meet the customer? So that's the part of social enterprise that we're trying to grow. But it does need help. Like, we have a Pathways to Employment team who help the employers and the young adults. We are working at the moment on getting funding for a clinical psychologist. Like, it's a big transition to bring these guys into work, and there's some supports that are needed with that, deep supports that are needed. And we have occupational therapy. We have a lot of supports that are needed to make it work, but it can work. That's the point.
How many staff do you have?
We have now got 14 staff. Yeah.
Okay.
14 staff.
And do you rely on private philanthropy to offset
we have a real mix. We were very, very lucky this year. We got a lovely big grant from Pubble, which is the first real sustainable funding we've received. It's a 5-year funding stream, and it's for lovely. 4 staff members. So that's huge for us.
That's lovely. Nice.
It's really nice. And it's great. A lot of work in it, but it's really, really good. We have the ETB, the Education Training Board, funding our classroom. We fund 2 of supports in the classroom, but they fund the other 2. We have received funding from Rethink Ireland around our staff in our cafe, and we had previously got a little bit of funding as well for our occupational therapist. And we're always on the mooch for funding, and we do a lot of our own fundraising. I mean, we do fundraising. We get out there and see. We have corporates who come to us and see how they can help and support, and you need that. And that's the beauty as well of having the charity number, is that we can, because you need some of that unrestricted funding. The grants, quite appropriately, are very restricted. So if you need 50,000 to employ somebody on 50,000, you don't get 50,000 plus 5,000, so if you want to have the freedom to have the nice t-shirts, to bring our young adults off and do an interesting day trip, to whatever it is, you need additional funding. And then we've got our traded income that is through our merchandise, our corporate catering, our partnership with Happy Out. There's a profit share there, and thankfully and crucially, our original lady who funded my salary has remained on board and funds our leadership team.
Amazing.
So that makes everything possible.
Like, I'd say there's families out there who have sons and daughters who got Down syndrome who are essentially like bored. They want to be meeting friends, they want to be getting on a bus, and they want to be going to work. I'd say they love the idea. You're right, it is getting the word out, and that's why doing things like this is really important. So hopefully people, if they do hear, they'll look us up on the website and they'll register their interest, and as stuff comes up that we can do with them, that's what we want. We really do. I mean, I think we all have a much greater understanding of what it's like to be isolated and lonely and have non-productive days after COVID, and how unacceptable it is. It doesn't have to be like that. There is a huge appetite in business to support these young adults. Kids growing up today are going to school with people with additional needs in their classroom. They fully expect to see people who learn differently in the workplace. Like business is catching up on this, but it's there. And if the young adults present to us and we can put them into a course, I just think we can
You can really change things.
It's looking back now, because from this conversation, it's got my head thinking, you have a young adult who's coming out of the back of COVID, who might feel confident, might be depressed, whatever it might be, and they're trying to reintegrate themselves back into society and back in the workplace, and they have that option. But then you have a same age kid who's got Down syndrome, who doesn't have that option. No. There's nothing for them to do. You just take that for granted. It's like, oh, well, they're fine. They're getting some special training a couple of times a week.
Exactly.
I mean, that's not stimulating for somebody who's smart.
And that extends to independent living, and that often extends to relationships. There's
a
lot that needs to change. Young adults typically live at home with their family members forever. So options get. We have a country now, and I love Ireland. So. That is giving opportunities at school level to these children, but instead of at the time where your opportunities in life should open wide up for you, they seem to still narrow for people with disabilities. And we just need to change that. And we also need to change that, when April was born, I couldn't look at the future because I knew it was grim. Like, we want, when people have babies with Down syndrome or babies with any additional needs in the future, that they can see that there's something out there for them, that there is a bright future. It is still hard work, but I would argue that absolutely everything that we put into April, we get back a millionfold. Of course it's still hard work, but raising any child is hard work. But it's a basic human right that people can go to work, and with, yes, it's an expensive model. We have a lot of staff, and, we can't do it with less. But, the disability sector is, we certainly don't have any higher, or whatever way the ratio is. Working with people with disabilities is a people business. It needs a lot of investment. You're
telling me that 10% of people who have Down syndrome are in employment and 90% aren't. That's pretty. That was pretty significant. I worked with Dublin Dialysis. We used to go to Lourdes every year. And we'd take a group of kids with us, and more often than not, there'd be a high portion who had Down syndrome. Yeah. And essentially, it was for the kid, of course, but it was also to give the parents
a break.
A break, which was huge for them, because they're going through the emotional and the physical and I can only imagine what parents are thinking about.
That's what people refer to as respite. Just getting a break from everything. But it's a bit of a leap now, but a big shout out, and I say it all the time, to Dublin Bus, because they now have partnered with us, as they will with any organisation, around doing independent travel training. And this goes back, by the way, to the respite piece, where if a young adult is with us now, very often when they start with us, they're being dropped in and they're being picked up. But if we refer them, or their family member, or they themselves refer to Dublin Bus, they will do what's called independent travel training. So many of our young adults now that is happening for them, which means that somebody goes to their house in the morning, gets the bus with them, brings them in, brings them to their course, escorts them home. And as time goes on, that support gets lighter and lighter. And sometimes I go into Wanderers and I see somebody kind of standing at a bush, and I'm going, Jesus, what's going on there? And they'll just show me their badge, and they're the Dublin Bus person who is now watching to make sure that so-and-so gets to the right stop, gets off at the right stop. And when you do that, you can unlock a day for a parent that they might never have had, which is that they then say goodbye to their family member in the morning, go off to training or to their job, and come home in the evening. And that is proper independence.
What does the rest of 2024 look like for you?
It's a very busy year. Well, we've got our move into the city centre. That's going to be kind of hopefully in June, July, and really kicking off properly there in September, with new kitchens, new classrooms, meeting rooms, and more young adults. We have our first anniversary of Happy Out at the Baths coming up in July, and a lot of work to do on that. We've just started opening now in the evening times for wine and tapas, and we need to bring some of our young adults. We need to build a schedule in there for them, and we have got our coffee shop in the cafe at Wanderers. We're now doing diversity and inclusion workshops there. We've just got a huge amount of moving parts at the moment. We've just hired 4 new members of staff. I've those to settle in. we've the strategic plan to do, and the big piece for me is in the middle of all this is I've had no opportunity to do the actual fundraising. So we've got to kind of put our heads on now and get a few corporate partners and a bit of work going with bringing in some additional funding. But like there's a lot, yeah.
My hope is that somebody listening, even if it's one person, is
Yeah.
listening to this and they would love to support and help. What's the best way for them to get in contact with Together Academy?
Well, the best way, what I love most really, is when people come to visit Wanderers, because they see the classroom and they see the students, and we can treat them to the most beautiful lunch and the most beautiful coffee, and they see the project in action. Or very often, we've had quite a lot of companies who have done a charity day for us. So they might do a 10K run around Wanderers, and they might do a leaflet drop for us. We're about to open the deck there for the summer, so we'd like 2,000 people in the local area to get a leaflet about that. Somebody could come in and do that, do a game of tag rugby with our students, and then they do charity fundraising around it, you know. So we always need funding, but the best thing to do, I suppose, is get in touch with me and have a chat. And this is something that I don't want to lose as we tell the Together Academy story, is like the reason there's so much of a drive to do it isn't just around our own children. It is like when you spend time with people with Down syndrome, it is such an enjoyable time. You know, when our customers come into the restaurant, they'll say like, they remember it. They remember it so differently than if you go to other cafes. Yeah. You know, that inclusive feeling, that kind of changing of perceptions, but it's always with a bit of crack. You know, they're great fun. Like the lads are great company. They're great to hang out with. They, you know, and I don't like, it's not fair to talk about everybody in the general, but you know, that kind of, not even self-awareness, that guard that so many of us walk around with every day, and it's really hard to meet the world and not have that guard up. The lads just don't have it. So if their passion is Munster rugby, that might be all they want to talk about, and that is the fun. If they've got the disco on Saturday night, they'll talk to the customers all about the disco on Saturday night. They'll still do their job, but there's a charm in that, and I think, you know, their wonderful skills of empathy drive our skills of empathy. And you know, so it's not all about earnest, we have to get these guys working, and like it's a real privilege, and it really is, to work with the guys. And actually my big challenge this year is to try and get back with them a bit more, because as a project grows and as you get more responsibilities, you know this, you're removed away from actually the wonderful joy of being with them. And sometimes now I just go in and I take 5 minutes, I just sit in the class and I just listen. You know, and you just go, this is why we're doing it.
Yeah,
and
you got to remind yourself that at times.
Absolutely, and it's so easy to lose sight of that, because the work is hard and there's always another meeting to go to. But actually, when you see the guys, when you hear their parents' testimonials, what the parents say about how the purpose, the change in their day, the getting ready the night before, that, you know, it's just wonderful work, and it would be just so remiss of me not to kind of say that, you know, I do talk a lot about the 4 mums who set it up, but we have got an exceptional staff team. You know, they are so driven, they are so ambitious, they are so questioning, and they're so progressive, and they really believe in the work that they're doing. And you know, so that's why it's easy for me to take time out to sit here today. I know everything's going great in Together Academy, and likewise I'd extend that to Brian Henratty and the team and Happy Out. They're just tremendous people, you know.
Being the CEO as you are, and having the opportunity to theme the sense of emotion and intellect around what you're building with a brilliant team, because you all know, in any high performing environment, I've been a part of a few, you're only as good as the people around you. Absolutely. And when you have great people, you know, that's what it's all about. And then tapping into their skill set and empowering them to drive their areas. Because sometimes, you know, as leaders, we sometimes forget that. It sounds like we've got that balance right. Yeah,
and I think they are driven not so much by the leadership of Together Academy, but they are driven by the young adults they're working with.
But that's what it's all about. It's about living, it's your passion project, but also you're turning it into a business. It's going to be sustainable and it's going to turn into great things.
And that's the actual beauty of it, because for so long people talk about disability as a drain on the system, and we are finding, you know, on the good days at Together Academy, we can make money and Happy Out. We can grow social enterprise businesses. We're going to get better and better at that in the few years, and that's a lovely thing to be able to say, that it's not all about, you know, it being a cost. You know, with the right supports, disability, these guys can run their own little businesses as well, and they can be champions for business.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that
Thank
you
you.
got a chance to come in and tell your story.
Thanks.
I think anybody who's listening to this wants to wish you all the best and wants to support you in what you're doing and your team.
Thanks.
And we look forward to seeing what Together Academy has in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. It's lovely to spend time with you. Take care. Thanks.
Produced by the Melrose Future Company.